during the month of August. We had funded our portion of the trust so that the construction bid could be advertised in the middle of September. Subsequent to that meeting, the state funds weren't released, so we asked Lori if she would author a letter to the State Capital Development Board kind of strongly encouraging them to release, help support getting those funds released, and also beginning to kind of outline some of the consequences of the delay. That letter had some effect. We got our lobbyists going and engaged in conversations with the state. What we've learned as of today, the governor's office has kind of hinged the funding of some of these major capital projects on new gaming revenues and new marijuana revenues that the state doesn't begin to collect till next January, or this coming January. So the likelihood of a bond issue, a capital bond issue from the state happening before then is not likely. It's more likely they're going to wait for several months of the revenues to come in and then size a general obligation bond issue, which means that the state might not have funds to transfer to the college till sometime, early next spring. So in terms of next steps, in my conversations or in my email exchange with our lobbyists, I was proposing several options that we might want to pursue in the meantime. One of them, which was the notion of, like we did with the science building, the college kind of stepped up in front of the first part of the science building to keep that project going, and then when the state funding was available, the state stepped in and kind of filled in the back part of it. It's not something that the CDB has offered to the college yet, but that's something that we're hoping our lobbyists will help us at least create an option for the state to at least allow that to help create the impetus to release the bid before next spring. We know that if the bid doesn't go out this fall, there won't be a contractor selected in time for the new construction season. We also know that bids that take place in the fall and the winter time are most likely to get the most active and best pricing from the contractors because they're trying to schedule their work for the coming year. So some of the arguments that we're trying to make for not waiting is the nature of the bid calendar, the nature to get that work started and not waiting until the summer or the fall to get the work started, losing a whole other year of delay to get that building going. So those are some of the arguments we're putting together. And then for the board's consideration tonight, because of those options, right now the governor's team is looking at alternative funds that they might be able to make available to us and other colleges in a similar situation for this fall. They're also planning on a bond issue down the road. So best case, they come up with money now. Worst case, we have to wait for a future state bond issue. And to me, a more likely scenario would be is getting the state to agree to use our funds first to kind of get the project going. So I guess Dr. Sudek was hoping that the board, looking at the different options and getting your advice is how best to proceed at this point in time before we make concrete proposals to the state.
Well, what kind of college are we talking?
We have $11 million in the trust account. The state's needs to deposit $35 million. So what we'd be potentially committing is up to that $11 million amount that the board's already raised multiple years ago. It's sitting waiting for that project to get going, and it might be a reasonable option to kind of allow things to proceed a bit quicker than it sounds like is going to happen.
So Ken, is that to say that the entire project price mark is plus or minus 47 million?
Correct.
Okay. And we have the 11 million sitting in our bank at the moment.
Correct.
But we need that state's permission in order to go forward.
Correct, because they're doing the bid, they're managing the process. They have to, like with the science building, they had our board approve an intergovernmental agreement to change the nature of the project to allow that to happen.
And how much was it? I know that was when I was coming on the board that we did spend CLC money first, but that gamble worked. The
Correct.
state ultimately came through. But could you please refresh me on what those amounts were?
Connie, do you remember off the top of your
Or
head?
I'm sorry, if you don't have them off the top of your head.
Well, we had it in the presentation last month. I'm just
I know you
remembering.
did. I'm sorry. I should have just brought
I
that
don't want to
forward.
throw a number out.
Yeah, but I'm remembering I'd be guessing we would have spent in $5, $6, $7 million.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what I was
Right?
going to say.
Yeah,
And the project overall was about how much?
26.
Right.
And the state came through 100% on that, correct?
Right.
Correct.
And how long did that take, do you remember?
It took 3 years.
Yeah. And if you recall, we're just finishing it now. We're in the
Yes.
final
Yes.
steps of that.
So it was quite a gamble then. It paid off.
And we just got the rest of it.
Yeah,
Right.
And it was a worse gamble because we didn't even have a budget then.
you're right.
Right.
And now at least we have a budget.
Right,
With revenue sources identified, but for the delay and
yeah.
the state's anticipated collecting of it.
Mhm.
So obviously, if our lobbyists are successful and they're able to find alternative sources of funds to help out colleges that are in our situation, that'd be great. That's kind of the best case scenario. But if they're not, do we want to wait another year for the state to raise the funds and delay the project even further? So that's kind of the pros and cons.
And the risk is we lay down 11 million now,
Right.
and we have to come through with 37 million more if the state does not.
Well, the state would come through with 35 million. It's just when would the state do it? I think part of the biggest problem we have with the state right now is a new administration. We have a governor's office that has a backlog of appointees to put in places. His office of the management of the budget isn't fully staffed. And so that's an issue in Springfield. Okay, do I really have this money available? Do I have to go out for a bond? I'm going to go out for a bond, but do I have enough now to get this rolling? If the college puts money up, how long before I go out for the bonds? There's a whole host of questions that the good part about it is Jim Underwood was in this same position under Governor Quinn. So he understands the Capital Development Board, he understands how it works, he understands all the ins and outs. Plus, I understand he brought a lot of the people back to the Capital Development Board that worked there before. So that part of it's okay. It's the governor's office that's still coming up to speed. And that's the gamble.
Got it.
Ken, could you just, is it the whole $11 million that we would have to kind of put on the table to get moving, or is it a portion of that?
It might not need the whole 11 million before the state revenues are available. You know, the bid will have just gone out, the construction contract will have been approved, let's say by December, January. They wouldn't be breaking ground till February or March anyway, so spending really won't take place till sometime later on next calendar year. So their need to draw on our funds initially may not really need to be there at all, but at least there's enough of a funding there that if the contract did get in place and the contract invoices started coming in, there'd be a way to pay those bills.
How many years have we been doing this on this building? How many years? It's been a really long time.
I'm told Governor Quinn was at the first groundbreaking.
Yes, he was.
All right.
Yeah, we were there.
And Jim Underwood was there too.
Yeah, Rich and I were there. Yeah, we were all there. Well, I mean, unless there's any objection, I think we have to move forward with this. I think the cards are in place.
Yes,
You know,
Yes.
I don't feel the probability is high.
it's better than last time.
Yeah, that we're gonna get
It's
the
been
money.
there.
And I think we need to move forward and come up, unless somebody objects, we do say so. Otherwise, we're gonna give them direction to move forward.
And then the other scenario would be is I'd ask Cheryl, what are some of our next communication steps to kind of keep pressure on? And she thought a possible letter from the board now to the governor might be a good next step for us. The fall veto session starts in early October. Maybe we can even have Nick parlay that into a letter from all of our the county delegation to send a strong message that we really need to keep this project moving.
Yeah, is Nick here tonight?
Unfortunately, he's not. He's traveling. He's at a conference, I believe, a legislative conference.
Is that the Metallica Scholars? We have a team at the Metallica.
Excellent.
Yeah. We're talking about the next phase of funding.
Yeah, I am comfortable with this, but I just want to just make sure that I understand this and that we basically have it on record as well. The only worst case scenario that we can't predict would be if the state doesn't pay, but we've not had a record of that occurring ever, correct, Rick?
No, never.
Okay, and so
Never.
you're not worried about it?
No, I'm not worried at all.
Okay,
And our senators and representatives are behind.
absolutely,
Right.
I know they are.
Right.
But I'm just saying, God forbid, the
Yeah.
money didn't come through, then our college would be paying an extra $35 million. And, but again, you don't think
Yeah.
that's like.
Or
I
a really
understand.
small building.
A teeny bit of.
Hopefully the legislative works out where they actually find other funds to help us get started sooner, which is great. That's the best case scenario, but if it doesn't, it'd be nice to know we have another option other than just waiting.
Oh, I definitely want to get, I'm with the team, I absolutely want to do that, I just want to make sure I'm understanding the risk factor here.
I have seen and talked with the governor twice since he's become the governor, and he has a soft spot in his heart for the College of Lake County for us stepping up with Trooper Ellis's funeral. He always leads with that. He thought we did a wonderful thing with that, and honest, both times I've talked to him, he leads with that.
Nice,
So he has a soft spot for us.
thank you.
Matt, are you okay with this?
Yes.
Julie?
Yeah, do we need a formal motion?
No, we're
Okay.
not to vote on tonight, there's nothing
Okay.
on the agenda to vote on, but
Okay.
there may be next month.
Might be
Hopefully
nice.
next month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Ken, you got what you need?
Yes, sir, thanks.
Lori?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. The next item is talking about board retreats. Earlier, I think Trustee Finger and Julie Schroeder was talking about that. We haven't had a board retreat, a formal one, for some time. And we do have on the calendar November 7th for a fall retreat. It isn't necessarily a board retreat. But we were thinking, since we did, we think there is some real good work with ACCT, or Association of Community College Trustees, recently, that we were thinking of asking them to come in and do a board retreat.
Who was that?
Norma and Colleen Norma, who helped with the presidential evaluation at ACCT. And we were looking and kicking that idea around rather than doing the November 7th meeting for fall retreat, which would be really sort of an update on activities going on in colleges, perhaps doing a fall retreat, a board fall retreat specifically. And we did speak with them, ACCT folks, the other day. They couldn't get it ready for November 7th. And I wanted to throw this out to you, and Catherine can jump in here at any time.
I got a comment. We found out that the new executive director of ICCTA, he's trying to go around to all the community colleges and get to know all of them, and he's doing boardmanship training without cost. So I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. I just wanted to throw that out there as a possibility.
Okay, we can certainly put that into the mix. If we did have ACCT do it, November 7th wouldn't work. We were thinking, so I need your input on this, we were thinking of perhaps doing the retreat on a Friday, having lunch here, and doing a retreat after our luncheon here for 3 or 4 hours on November 15th or the 22nd. Catherine, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and what we thought, as Bill said, looking at that, the process that Norma used for the presidential evaluation, the ACCT does have a model in place where they do a board self-evaluation. So they would send out an evaluation, they send out a board self-evaluation document to all board members prior to the retreat, and then have a report for us similar to what they did with the presidential evaluation, and use that data then to spark discussion. And it sounded like a pretty good process, hearing that out yesterday.
So, thoughts?
It sounds interesting.
So it would just be a Friday afternoon then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is sort of thinking, I mean, it's the end of the week. It's not a Tuesday night where all of us have activity to do the next day. Not that you're not going to do anything on Saturday, but it's sort of the end of the week. Clear your mind. You don't have to worry about something later, like say, in the week. And just thinking Friday would be kind of I think anyway, a nice way to do it. Sort of an end of the week, and we can all sort of just concentrate on the activities that we're going to be doing there. We would talk about roles and responsibilities. We'd talk about the impact that our decisions have on students and, of course, the administration and the college as a whole. We might throw in a case study or so. So there could be a number of things where we could be actively engaged.
And the time frame, Bill, lunch around noonish,
Noon
and then
to
go till 4-ish.
Something like that.
Was that true? Is that?
I was talking about that, we just got all the information from doing the president's evaluation afterwards. So all I'm saying is I wasn't impressed with how they handled it. That's my input. So, and I talked to colleagues at ICCTA, and they've had the new executive director on their campus, and they said that he's doing an excellent job. So if we don't use him this time,
Yeah.
maybe another time, because you know Mike Monahan really, really well,
Yeah.
and we need to get to know this new gentleman. He's supposed to be really good.
He seemed wonderful.
Yeah.
We enjoyed our interactions with him very much, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just a little hesitant about ACCT. You know, we've had a long history with ACCT with different searches and different, well, even retreats. And I never found them to really be up to College Lake County standards.
Okay.
I think Bill can remember a presidential search which went awry under ACCT.
Yeah, different personnel, but
Yeah.
you're right, I do remember. Okay. I think I hear you loud and clear. All right. That concludes my reports. Turn it over to the president.